Listen, we were talking, whether we know each other, we owe each other.
Whether or not we know each other, we owe each other because of oneness.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
That's right.
Listen, man, we owe, like, that's the work. The work is you deciding to put aside your ambitions, your wants, your desires for the good of mankind. I think the conversation now the temperature has to rise at this point. And now all artillery, all weaponry that we have, not just in the physical world, but in the spiritual world, has to be now talked about, or at least let's hear it out. Because some of the spiritual methods upon which now that are being taught to us for years and years and years, for some reason aren't resonating the way it used to be. There's a divide in our religiosity. There is something that is brewing that we've never been a part of. You know, this nation has been largely Christian for the better half of my life, my mother's life, her mother's life. So a lot of us don't know any different when it comes to our religious posture. And now we're in a space where people have grown. Here it is. The internet happened.
That's right.
Information became available to people. Scrolls and books and structures that had historical information were now digitally put into a system now, to where you couldn't block it or stop it or put no iron door on it. It was in the digital universe. And then they gave us digital devices. And then we started to say, I used to have to just believe this, but now this says something different.
That's right. That's right.
And the questions start to arise. Over the last 20 to 30 years, you've seen an uptick in division now, because people came from one religion, which was Christianity, that has been dominated in America for the better part, again, of centuries. Now people are thrusting their spiritual avenues in different places now. Sure. Now people are having different spiritual experiences, not inside of a church, but in their homes, through situations, through all type of things. People are finding what they call God. People are finding their spiritual connection to a higher consciousness. Yeah. And now that is boiled over now, because you have the traditional church, and now you have the non-traditional church, which are the called out ones in or out of church. I'm not calling anybody wrong, because your path is your path, and that's not the conversation we're having. I don't want to debunk Christianity. Let me be the first to say, I'm not debunking anything. Right. I'm just saying, are we expanding upon where God can be? And I'm interested. I've always been interested. I've always had a perspective. Yeah, let me get my phone. My bad. No, we're not going to stop. Hold on for a second. There we go. So I've always had a curiosity to understand God from such a broad perspective, because God can't just be that. I don't believe that. I think God is responsibility. I think God could be many things, but I think God is the all there is, the all there was, in all things, all life, all universe, everything. Yeah. What you see, the trees, the wind, everything. God is neutral. It's not a man nor a woman. It's neutral. It's the universe. It's how we grow and come. It's everything that is and will always be. And I've always had that sense of growing out of this cocoon. And it's not that, and I've grown in maturity. It's not that my cocoon was wrong. It's just that now I had to now expand how I seen life upon which my foundation. So I honor my tradition. Even if it's fake, even people think it's fake or not real, my life was real. And those principles guided me to this idea. So it was a vehicle nevertheless. Everything is neutral. Nothing is atypical to just you and has feelings towards you. When things happen to you in this plane, they happen to you for a reason to get you to a spot. Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it doesn't hurt. Sometimes it's like, you know. But I say all that to say this. We have a guest here. Miss Walker. Miss Billie Walker. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing today?
This is our second time doing this, ain't it?
It's okay. Look, listen, everything happens for a reason. Here we are.
Absolutely.
Again. But listen, you mentioned it. Like we are going through a time period where people are questioning things. They have access to more, and for everyone, it's different. For me, it wasn't that access. For me, it was a lifetime of experiences that got me to the point where I am. Most of that experience just in the past 2 years.
Wow.
That really made that shift and that change in me. My entire life, I had questions, things that seemed strange to me growing up in the church, going to Bible college, all of those things.
Okay.
But it all really just came to a forefront for me in the past couple of years. So,
wow.
So listen, so I grew up in the Midwest.
Okay.
Very rural areas. Grew up very poor.
Wow.
You know, I told you about this last time, stories that I tell my kids about being in a time where, you know, food stamps really meant paying for things with colorful money, monopoly money. You know what I mean? Like a green $20 bill and a red $10 bill. That's how I grew up. And I was taking that money into the store, paying for that when, you know, my parents might not have had the confidence to do so. That was my job as the oldest of 5 children, right?
Who's the oldest of 5? I'm the youngest of 5. Look at that.
Are you the youngest of 5? I thought you had a lot more siblings than 5.
No. Well, so I live with 5 of my siblings.
Okay.
They're my close siblings. And I'm the youngest of 14.
I was about to say, I was thinking more like 13, 14.
Yeah, I'm the youngest of 14.
From what I know about
But I'm the youngest, though. You're the oldest.
Okay.
So there's still a parallel there.
There is, yeah.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah. But, yeah.
So anyway, you know, my 5 siblings included my brother, who I shared a mother with, and then a sister who had the same father. You know, like that blended family, right? I actually lost my mother when I was 4 years old.
Wow.
So when I was 4 years old, you know, and really, this is part of my story, so I'm just going to share it, right? So my father was acquitted for the murder of my mother when I was 4.
What?
So I really lived my whole life not really knowing, kind of.
So how was that? Like what was the temperature around your area? It was a small town?
Very small town.
Because you know folks be talking so how was that? Like how was that?
It was hot. It was, because even the gravesite of my mother to this day is really known as an area where people will go to visit to try to, you know, bring about her ghost or, you know, do different things with her spirit. So people where I'm from know the story or know their version of the story of what happened to her. I honestly did not know the truth until after my father left this world. So,
wow.
And again, that's just been in the last couple of years that I've, you know, really been given some of those truths. So, you know, we stayed in that area, which was hard, right? The situation with my mother happened in that area. We lived in that area. We grew up there. I stayed there. I went to high school to college.
Did they find the killer?
Well,
if he was acquitted?
My father was responsible for that. He was acquitted, but he was responsible.
Oh, got you. Yeah. So, wow. Okay, man.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Which again, he took to the grave with him. But later on in life, through mediumship, through different things in, you know, that the spiritual world, I was able to, you know, have that information given to me by him.
So you found out.
We're jumping way ahead in my story.
I know we are,
yes.
But so hold on. But I got to be responsible to ask that question. Like, so you're saying you found out that he was responsible through spiritual access.
Yes.
So not somebody asking you or telling you about it. Just
there was a mediumship situation.
Okay.
Right. Someone that I was working with that was able to communicate in that way with my father, who was able to share that information with me, yes.
Wow.
And, you know, listen, that's taboo in itself for some people.
Yeah.
Some people are, oh, like I would never do that, or I would never, that's witchcraft or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
All of that is
We'll
out
get
there.
yeah, and that's
We'll get to that, right?
yeah. I mean, because that's yeah. So okay, so that happens.
That's been, so that happened as a child. So my brother and I, who shared the same parents, we
Okay.
both grew up with that being part of our life.
Yeah.
And, the difference in like my father's family and my mother's family, obviously they lost a child. They lost their sibling. They lost, someone in their family. And for them, their belief of how that happened was different than what the court's belief was.
Wow.
So anyway, grew up there, continued to live there, went to Bible college there. While I was in Bible college, I started working for, this company that today I still work for, where you and I actually met, right? And within that company, I decided to make a move and move, across the country. I was young. I had met some friends, some people in the Charlotte area, and so I made that move. And so, within those first couple years of living in the Charlotte area, I got married.
Wow.
Had a child, and my husband, that was my first husband, he worked for the company as well. Had started to build a life and a family here.
Yeah.
And then life happened. Let's see, about how many years into our marriage, we decided to separate.
Wow.
And, we had one child together.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was, about a decade ago.
Wow.
And so I continued to stay and to live here. It was the last thing that I wanted to do, was to take my child, out of the area that her father lived in. Wanted to make sure that they were able to maintain that relationship. And then, the last, 6 or 7 years, probably about 3 years after my divorce, I met someone else, and it escalated quickly.
Wow.
I met them at an event, and they moved across the country, for me. And within a year, we had bought a house and had a first baby and had a second baby.
Wow.
So it went really fast.
Yeah.
Right? So when things are supposed to happen like that,
Yeah,
they do. It's
they do.
easy and it's natural, right?
Yeah.
That's my new rule, Talbert, too, is that if something is supposed to be, it's natural, and it happens, and it feels good, and it doesn't, you got to work hard. I believe in working hard, and I do that every day, but I don't think that you have to have blood, sweat, and tears for relationships, for example, right? You don't have to do that. This was natural, right?
Absolutely.
So I'm sure we could expand on that, but let me just get through my final piece of my story here. So, again, life moving fast, career-wise and personally, things started to change, and right after COVID, I had 2 COVID babies, and in 2022, we experienced the loss of our daughter.
Wow.
And this was our baby. She was almost 2 years old. We had a tragic accident in our home that ultimately took her life.
Wow.
And I'm here to tell you, I can have this conversation with you today and be able to articulate it because of all of the things that I've experienced since then.
For sure.
And the perspective that I now have. Obviously, that's the loss of a child is
I couldn't imagine.
Is something that I would never want my worst enemy to go through, right?
Man, that is something.
I would not. But that happened in 2022, and that was the year that I had my first, and it was actually prior to the loss of my daughter, that I had my first mediumship reading. And I don't know what it was, during COVID, people kept telling me, like, get on TikTok, there's so much information. And listen, I work in technology
Yeah.
at my company, but I'm not a technology person.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
So I'm like
Yeah.
a minimal app user,
Yeah.
and like my children are teaching me how to use my phone. That's me, right?
Yeah.
But I decided to download TikTok, and I decided, that I was going to dig in, and I don't know why, but immediately my algorithm was spirit world, psychics, mediums, and I had always been very interested in connecting with my mother. And understanding more about her death. And you have to understand that
Because it's your second premature death.
my mother was my first, right?
Yeah, yeah,
My
and your daughter was second, so you had two of them.
I had two, but this connecting with the medium actually took place prior to the loss of my daughter, 2 months prior. So during that mediumship reading, and I was, it was a very legit, mature, established medium that I was working with. And it was the real deal. You can experience those things. And I hear stories all the time about people who have, and they're, scams, and they're leading you down a path and getting you to give them information. This was real.
Yeah.
And so, again, she connected with my mother. She connected with my father. And I had this conversation with my father through this medium where he was able to tell me, I'm sorry. I did not know what to do. It was an accident, but it did happen.
Wow.
And he knew that, with the loss of our mother, the loss of him, if he went to prison or whatever would happen, in the words that he used through this medium, he was just in fear of what would happen to us,
Wow.
My brother and I. So during that reading, a couple things happened. My whole adult life, I would, and I think this will connect with for a lot of people, you have things that happen to you, or like synchronicities that happen, right?
Sure.
I would notice no matter where I would be, I would have ladybugs that would land on me.
Yeah.
I would be in the basement of the house, and there would be a ladybug there, and it would like crawl on my leg. Wow. Or it was always, right? But I never connected it with anything, but I just knew that it was something I saw all the time. So this medium said, your mom is showing me something that she says that she sends to you all the time. And I'm like, what? And she's like, ladybugs? And immediately I knew, like, that was one of the things during the conversation that made it very real for me, because there's again, I'm not a social media person. You're not seeing me post. You're not seeing me talk about any of this anywhere. So I knew that it was real. But to kind of close that up, she said something to me. She said, your mom and dad want you to know that they know you've been through a lot, and they are with you, and they're by your side all the time. And I thought about it, and I was like, wait, like, what have I gone through? I haven't gone through anything. It's COVID. Everybody's going through the same thing right now, right? Everybody's gone through the same thing. But she read that wrong. When she saw that, whatever she saw, however they connect, what it was what was to come that she was seeing that I was going to go through. So
that was your daughter.
2 months later, I lost my daughter.
Wow.
And I was, it happened on my son's 3rd birthday. They were 15 months apart. And just the three of us were home together. And, I'm not going to go into all of the details because I do want to be able to have this conversation with you.
Yeah.
But I was able, after that happened, listen, again, I work for a phenomenal company that supported me so much that I was able to take the time that I needed to start my healing journey, and to start a journey that I was not expecting to start. Wow. I immediately, after the services and everything, and there's a couple, things I'd like to share that I experienced, after her service, and different, signs I was given, and things I was shown to let me know that I was about to go on this journey. But, once everything was settling down, I hit the road. My family and I, my other 2 children and my now husband, we did a cross-country, tour. We hit everybody in the family.
Wow.
We went to their homes. We, my family still has a farm in the northwest corner of Kansas that's my great-grandparents homesteaded. You know, we went out there and it was just, you know, peaceful and nothing.
Corn huskers.
Yeah. Listen, if you've ever seen or heard or seen a picture of a field of sunflowers, and when the sun comes out, they all move and turn and face their, you know, their heads, their faces of the sunflower to the sun. It is one of the most absolute beautiful things to see.
I want to go to Kansas.
It's life-changing.
I want to go to Kansas.
Yeah. It's flat. Literally, the farm you can see for miles down the dirt roads.
Yeah,
like,
I went to Montana one time. I went to a speaking of Christian, I went to we do VBS, a mission trip.
Yeah.
So I went to a mission trip, and one of the coolest things was watching the rain in Montana from the flat plains, like watching it. It was amazing. Wow, beautiful country.
Beautiful. Yeah.
I mean, it's like a hidden gem, Montana.
It's beautiful.
We went to Billings. We got out in Billings, and we had to drive like 5 hours to the reservation.
Yeah.
Man, and the reservation, you know, side note, man, it was one of the most horrendous scenes you will ever see. Alcoholism. There's a stable of people on these reservations that are just hidden and taken away from you just don't even see them, and it's like they're living in a totally different world, man. And that's one thing I will say: the idea of Christ, even in a flawed religion, if you may say, it's still powerful in that way, because we were able to go down there and give those kids just love, you know, acceptance. You know, it's simple. It's hard to do because we're distracted by these things, these social constructs, these spiritual constructs.
Yeah.
And we're unpacking and we're learning and we're rejecting and we're understanding, we're overstanding, we're getting mad.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to fight, we're going to claw, because you got to know, you got to understand that the things that you're going to say, that the places that you're at, people are going to ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, people are going to say like, okay, it's good that you said prior to, because people are going to say, okay, because of what happened to your daughter, this is where you are, because you used to be a Christian, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So go ahead.
Yeah. So listen. So on this journey to these beautiful lands of Kansas,
yes,
I listened to hours of near-death experiences.
Okay.
So my brother, the one that I share, you know, the mother with, him and his wife were into these things far before I was, and learning, you know, just about different things. So anyway, hours of listening to near-death experiences, because I connected with it. I wanted to know what my daughter had experienced. I wanted to know, you know, when her soul left her body. I wanted to know what she saw. And by listening to these near-death experiences, it almost gave me hope. It almost gave me a peace, you know, and my family didn't understand it, you know, and I'm in the car, I'm always the driver. Yeah. Ain't nobody driving but me. And so I got to control the radio, and that's what we were listening to, doggone it. So we were listening to the near-death experiences, and just hours of it, right? And the near-death experiences then went into an audiobook called Journey of Souls, Michael Newton, Journey of Souls. And in this audiobook, he was a doctor, he was a hypnotist, right? And his job was to hypnotize people who would come in to his office and who would say, I have this debilitating pain in my side and I don't know why. Wow. The doctors don't know why, they can't figure it out. So what he would do, he would hypnotize them, and he would take them to a time in their life where something could have happened that would be causing this, right? So where it's more of a psychological pain that they're experiencing versus, you know, a medical pain. Well, during one of these sessions, he accidentally took someone to a past life. Right? So what this woman experienced during the session was she realized that during this past life, she had been on a battleground. She was a warrior, and she had been stabbed in the side. What? And so that pain she was experiencing in her present timeline, her current life, was because of the way that she had lost her life in a previous life, right? So this was something that he was not a believer of, but he
because I'm over here
experiencing it right in front of him
Wow.
as he's taking this, woman through this session. And so he continued it. He continued it for years, I think 30 to 40 years. He had sessions where he would take people back through their past lives, and he would show them how their past lives connected to the current timeline or the current life that they're in, whether it be karma related, whether it be health related, whatever it might be. He was showing them how things connected, which ultimately helped them to understand the reasons why they go through the things that they go through in their current timeline
Yes.
and their current life.
Yes.
It also showed people, because during these sessions, they would be able to see that there was others in these other lives that they could see in their present life. So then comes the terms, soul family, soul groups, people that we live many lives with. So you probably meet people now and you're like, I feel like I've known you my whole life.
Yeah.
Or you instantly connect.
Let me ask the question.
Okay.
Why don't we just know?
We don't, because that would take all of the fun out of
But
it.
that's
Talbert.
what I'm. But that's
we
what I'm.
have to have that
But
amnesia.
this is where people question religion, things like this. I'm just asking. This is the ambiguity, the now question.
Yeah.
If I say to you, if the person who created this box, if I ask them to deconstruct or reconstruct, that they can do it piece by piece.
Sure.
But if I ask you the question, why don't we know that? Why is it a feeling?
I'm going to give you two reasons.
Okay, go ahead.
The first one is you hear about children all the time during that 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old age where they will say things like, oh, I remember this. My son said to me just a few weeks ago, Mommy, I found Marley, which was my daughter's name. I found Marley, and then Marley found you. Wow. And then you found Daddy. And I tried to get him to elaborate on that, and he couldn't quite wrap his mind around it. But he says things like that all the time. Or even things you hear kids say like, I used to be your mommy, or I used to be your daddy. Or you have kids who are able to recount the, today, well, actually, let's see, yesterday, 9/11. They're able to tell you everything that happened on 9/11 as if they were a person that was alive during that day. There are kids that immediately, 2 years old, and they love airplanes. They know everything about them. You read one book to them about an airplane because they tell you they love it and they know everything about them. Sure. That's because it ties back to a previous timeline, a previous life. So that's my first answer for you, okay? So you said, why do we never? I'm telling you, there are some people that can recount their past lives, or they were able to understand pieces of them.
A broader question. Okay. Why can't the collective benefit?
The collective cannot benefit because of the goal. The goal is for you to take the things that you learned, the things that you experienced in these other timelines, and to continue to be, or to want to be, to grow, to be a better person, to experience Christ consciousness, to grow in a way to where, for example, there are people that in every life, they struggle with money.
Of course.
They struggle with relationships.
Absolutely.
They struggle with hatred, right? There are people that experience those in every life.
Absolutely.
Their goal in whatever timeline they're in is to overcome those things, right? We choose what we want to experience.
And I agree, and I think that I don't necessarily think your theory is off base in a sense. Yeah. But why don't in the consciousness that we're in, why don't I know that I chose this life? Why don't I consciously know this? And why am I not giving that information? And why, you get what I'm saying? Like, why is it just...
Here's why. Because you don't seek it. Because you don't know you should. Because think about it. That 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old who's saying, I see this person in the room, or I hear these voices, or I experienced this. What are parents saying? Oh, that's imaginary. No, you didn't. They're blocking that. They're shutting that down. So they're pushing those. So
we force reality into our kids.
What we want our children to believe, we force that on them, right? I did that to my now 13-year-old daughter. I did that to her when she was 2, 3, 4, 5. Because guess what? She was 5 years old saying, Mommy, why, if there's a God, why is he allowing this to happen? Why is this happening if there is a God? Why is God allowing you and my father to be divorced from each other?
Wow.
Right? And so I'm pumping into her everything that I want her to believe, right? With now my 5-year-old son, I feel like I have an opportunity to, allow him to experience
How do you
totally different.
express spirituality to him, or do you even let him get in that realm? Like,
I do.
What kind of approach do you take?
With him, obviously a question from him is going to be, where is Marley? Where is Marley? She left us here, but where is she? And I tell him, Marley is everywhere. Marley is in the trees. Marley is in the sun. Marley is in nature. Everywhere you look, she is with you. So me and my son, when we step outside together to start our day, we will hold hands and we will stand in the sun. And we will just let the sun beam on our face. And he will tell people we do that because that's where we get our powers. That's where it comes from. And the most important things, and I haven't really got into this yet, that I don't say to my son are, we don't talk about hell. We don't talk about a man who sits on a throne, who judges all of us, in heaven. We don't do that. We talk about oneness. We talk about love. We talk about thankfulness. We talk about how to be a good person because it's still about that.
So how do you view? What's your perspective on God now? Obviously,
God is an energy source that created all of us out of curiosity, out of wanting to know and to experience things. God is in all of us. God, and I think that I used this analogy last time I was here, but the way that I look at it is like a body of water, an ocean.
Yeah.
And all of the different types of cups that you can imagine. There's so many cups.
Yeah.
The Yetis, whatever, the different colors, the whatever. Those represent people, right? The bodies that we're in. You take all of those and you scoop water out of the ocean. We all have God in us.
Yeah.
It's not what we were taught as little kids about just asking, Jesus to come into our hearts. We literally have God in us. And this is where it ties back to the reasons why we, with how I feel about, religion now, is that the foundation of it is to create fear, to keep us in line, right? To not allow us to know what we have in us. For example, we can heal each other, right? We can control our reality. Manifestation is real. All of those things are real. But we're taught that they're not, or we're taught that, again, it's witchcraft or it's demonic. I know. Meditation even, Talbert. I was told as a young child in youth group that meditation, it wasn't good to try to go within yourself, to try to find answers for something or to try to do any of that. It wasn't right to do that because you have one answer and that answer is God or that answer is Jesus and you should look no further than that. But why should I not want to look within myself? Right?
Yeah. Man, so go ahead.
The Hypnotist, I listened to that, for hours as well. And I just became fascinated with the fact and the things I was learning, which were we choose what we go through. And I thought, wow, how am I going to explain to somebody that I believe that I chose to lose my child? How am I going to explain that to someone without them thinking that I'm a monster or that I'm a crazed person, right? How am I going to explain that? Well, the truth is that soul of my daughter, we planned this timeline together. And at some point, I had to have this spiritual awakening, and it would never have happened had I not lost her because I was too afraid. But when you go through something so terrible, you fear nothing else because you have gone through the absolute worst. So fear does not exist in my life, in this timeline for me anymore. And my goal and the soul of Marley, whom I've lived many lives with,
wow,
we chose that together to happen to me and my family because of
Does
the
it-
spiritual awakening.
Does the same thing happen in every life? Or just...
No, and listen, and I want to just put this out there. Again, this is all very new to me. I'm still
Gotcha.
learning.
Gotcha.
I'm still evolving myself. My consciousness is still expanding. And from what I've been able to tell, because now I'll connect this to, I did then go out and seek my certification to be a hypnotist. So
Wow.
I have a level 2 certification. Dolores Cannon, if anyone knows who she is, she has years and years of experience. So now doing these hypnosis sessions, I have heard many past lives, and they're never the same. But what is connected in all of them and aligns in all of them are the lessons that you want to learn and the things that you take with you, right? I did a hypnosis session on someone who, in this life, experienced chest pains for unknown reasons. Been to many doctors. There's no explanation for it. It would be, it's gas, it's whatever, but there's no medical explanation for it. We did a past life session. In that session, I took them to their last day of their life in that lifetime, and they were murdered by being stabbed in the chest.
Oh my
In the same area that they have these pains. And since that time, they don't experience those pains anymore.
You serious?
It's unlocking those things, right? It's unlocking what you experience, and then, okay, well, now I know, right? And then you're able to be free of that, and you understand why it's there.
Man, that's...
Right?
So you did a session with somebody. So do you do hypnosis on your kids? Like, would you do it on your child?
Yeah, I would.
Like, how would that work?
Not my 5-year-old, because he, just the capacity of understanding that yet, we're not there. My 13-year-old, yes.
So is what you're doing God? Like, do you think God is in So what would you say to a person that says to you that if you won't do this on your child, because people pray with their child at 5 years old, people, they go to the spirit, they introduce their God, but you won't introduce this to your kid, and you say it's real. You can see how people would think that.
And
but go ahead.
This is what I would say. Look, yes, you pray with your 5-year-old. I prayed with mine.
Yeah.
But praying with a 5-year-old sounds a lot different than praying with an adult.
That's true.
Right? So I'm having the conversations with my son about God, source, energy, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Even about Christ conscious, but I don't call it that. I just call it being a good person, right? With my 13-year-old, she understands. And listen, I believe she understood it far before I did, right? I believe that. So yes, and here's why. There's taboo around hypnosis. People think
there is.
People think you have no control. People think that I'm able to just make you do whatever I want you to do, and it's untrue. You have complete control.
Is it because people feel like we're locked into this reality? Like, we don't have vision outside of this reality. So when people hear something like this, the questions are like, come on, this ain't real. Like, you're making this up. Like, many people would say that, and I actually this last time, like, people would say, okay, you had a psychotic break. Like, and it's understandable. Like, people would say, okay, people will brush it off. At worst, not even like, okay, I'm not even going to take this serious and not see the power in it because of how you got to it. Like, okay, because when a child dies, you can see the evidence of people who's lost children, and it's almost one of those things where it's suffocating. Or how you find air, because it goes against nature, because you were supposed to go before them. Yeah. Nature got perverted and moved. And that way something else had to move. So now you're here, and people would say, okay, that's understandable, but how do we take this serious? How does this resonate with the collective? How is this not witchcraft?
Yeah. Well,
go ahead.
I could take that many different directions, but I'll be honest. It is, if they feel that way, it is not time for them to experience or understand it. We all have a time where our consciousness, where we get to that point where we're able to receive those types of things. And again, it all ties back to fear. I was at a point where I have no fear.
Wow.
And again, tying fear back to religion, it is the basis of it. I feared going to sleep at night because I thought the rapture was going to happen without me. And
the rapture was added, I think, in 1886.
Listen, there's so many things added and taken away.
It was added in 1886. It was.
Yeah, but for Christians, listen, I'm here to tell you that it's what you believe. I'm not saying it's not real. I'm saying there's more.
Yeah.
There's more to it. The things that Jesus literally said in the Bible, if you go back to those things are real Christ consciousness.
His name is Yeshua, not Jesus.
Okay, say it again.
Yeshua.
Yes, okay.
Or Yehoshua. Because Jesus in the Greek means Hail Zeus.
I know.
So
yes.
You're calling actually
There's
the other
many
name.
Names, right?
So that's what you're calling the other name, though. That's what the name is. And it's while we're talking about it, I hear people talking about it and make it matter of fact. I'm not a matter of fact person because knowledge is fluid. We live in the frequency. We live in the dimension. So the flow of information, the flow of energy. So I'm just as wrong or just as right because I'm doing the same thing they're doing. So Jesus could be the name. So it tongue in cheek, because knowledge is for us to kind of decipher how we go about our life when we look at our historical figures and we look at how they live their life and we mirror. But there have been historical things that have been left out. And one thing I will say to the Christian church that now we're in an age where it's best that if you just say, we're going to be honest about a few things. And then I think the talent that left, the people that left will start to see and bring back the power and see that there's an expansion. There was more to Christ. There was more to what he did. There was more to how he flowed, how he moved, how he worked into the earth, how he was out and about, how there were sorcerers. There were things that he used, energy, matter, all of these things that he used. So when I ask you the question, I'm asking you that people will ask this question, but I do understand that it is time now for a spiritual revolution. Here's what the lifeblood of the conversation we talked about. And though now you're into hypnosis, because that's a far cry from Christianity, and you got to know that people are going to look at this and think, man, Billy doing hypnosis, you got to know that they're going to be like, come on, Billy. Yeah. Come on, Billy. Come on, Billy. We know that. Like, folks just trying to pay their bills. You know what I mean? People just be stressed out from work. Yeah. You know what I mean? People just life, But I'm here to tell them, I'm going to tell them they don't have to be.
They
Absolutely.
don't have to be.
And that's my point. Yeah. It's like, you may not agree, but intently listen, because this is what I do know. I may not go down that pathway that you're going. Yeah. It does not mean that there's not a nugget. There's not something that will help me, because in real time, Billy, you helped me you were one of the caveats to help me get by. Why wouldn't I believe? Why wouldn't I see and explore the idea of where you are now to help me through my journey? Because we're on a journey. I don't care what you say. We are on a journey, a spiritual journey. Yeah. And when you're on a journey, Billy, you need more than one water bottle. You're going to stop at more than one food place. You're going to stop somewhere else because you're going to get hungry again. And I think what's happened is we got fed the same cheeseburger. Doesn't mean the cheeseburger isn't good, but it means that there's more food than that cheeseburger. That cheeseburger was great in its time, but there's chicken. There's steak, there's other sushi, things. Mahi, fish. There's all types of food. Yeah. There's a lot. Some of it makes you sick.
They do.
There's witchcraft
right?
There's witchcraft in Christianity that people do. There's witchcraft outside of Christianity. There's just a lot of spiritual mixed messages everywhere, and I think this conversation is very sensitive. I've been having it for a long time, been on the verge of having it for a long time. And I'm glad that you came, and I wanted to see and hear your story and continue to see your story, because you persevered to something and you helped me in my life. So I've seen some evidence of what you were before you even acquired this knowledge. Your heart posture always has to be in place. Yeah. That's what leads you to your purpose.
Yeah.
Your heart posture gonna have to be in place before I think something like this can come. But continue to talk, though. I want to hear a little bit more before we close out.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me think of what I was going to. Well, you said something that I wanted to touch on just
Go ahead, touch
a
on it.
minute ago about Jesus and the things he did in the Bible, and you talked about the people that left the church. And I think that if you were to ever ask those people that left the church why they left the church,
yes,
it's not going to be because of anything that Jesus did in the Bible.
No chance.
It's going to be because of the teachings of Paul, for example, about the choices that we make in our sexuality, for example, or the way we treat women.
Yeah.
All of those things. People don't leave the church because of Jesus, because of the teachings of Jesus, right? They don't. What they don't understand, though, is there's so much more about Jesus that's been taken away. What he did as a young child and 20-something, and the things that he was learning about that you just mentioned.
Yeah, he
right?
went to the Egyptian schools, I hear. He went to the learn the mystics. He learned all of those things from. That's where he was learning. He was learning.
He was a yogi. He was a mystic, right? All of those things.
That's what I hear.
That's true.
Yeah, that's what some history. And I think when we have these conversations, and on any side, no matter if you just staunchly believe that didn't happen, if you say if you're biblically just like this, and I'm not, this is what it says, no adding, no taking away from the book, then you're not gonna ever see outside of that. And that's okay too. And I think the people who become woke and see more knowledge, it doesn't mean that you look, it's the same principle in reality. If you get rich, you don't look back at another person who don't have as much as you and say, stop. Maybe that's what they needed in their life. And that's what I had to learn and mature on this journey, is that everybody's not the same. Some people won't want to acquire the knowledge. Some people will always be a Christian, and that's just okay. Yeah. And I think that's important to say, because even when we evolve, it doesn't mean they're not evolving as Christians, because there is value in everything, I believe in, because infrastructure is infrastructure. Yeah, it can become a tight constraint, but infrastructure is infrastructure when you look at it in a manner to where people are growing on a daily basis, because that's the whole point of all this conversation. I just don't want to say, let's just talk about the history and how they took this out of the Bible. No. I want it to be a point to it. And the point is that we're in an age to where everybody has to wake up and respect that there's different spiritual avenues. You don't believe in hell, for example. I don't believe in hell. You don't. That is a cornerstone of Christianity. Most people would say to you that, listen, you don't believe in hell. Well, I wouldn't take that chance. That you will get scolded by the traditional believer of the church. People, and I don't see a lot of churches now leaning on that theology, even so with hell.
It's not like it was when we were young.
No. Right? I think people grow and evolve. I think there's just one of those things to where it was what people were growing in their understanding of the biblical text, because it is a text that had been translated in many different languages. So people level of education, especially in the African American community, how our education slowly progressed, and the Bible, our understanding of it and what we got out of it. So there's a lot of intervals that happen that can't just be absolution, if that makes sense. On either side, it wouldn't be responsible for any of us to do that, because that's why this conversation is difficult to have, and that's why people can easily reject it. They can look at it and say, "Oh, you know what I mean?" And I understand that. And that's what we're saying too. That's right. It is everybody's spiritual right.
It's everyone's spiritual right.
That's what we're saying.
That's right.
So,
and I want to tie it back to
go ahead
for you, though. Okay, so everybody has a different vehicle.
Absolutely.
Way, right? And everybody has a different time frame, right?
For sure.
So I want to take it back to my first husband.
Okay.
My brother, 15 years ago, tried to have this type of conversation with me. And then my first husband said, absolutely not. We don't want this in our home. Don't you ever speak of this again. And I'm pretty sure they probably didn't talk again for 15 years because of that, right?
Wow.
So again, in the beginning of this conversation, you said we have information, we have experiences, and sometimes people are awakened by other people's experiences.
Absolutely.
Right? So my first husband is a prime example of that same one that said, absolutely not, keep this out of my home. After I lost my child, it impacted him in a way that caused him to have a spiritual awakening.
Wow.
Right? This is an individual who people are still shocked if I share this story with him. He's a person that loved material things, for example, like, expensive shoes and everything, right? And now he's someone that understands that stuff doesn't matter. That stuff isn't real. That stuff isn't what makes you happy. Guess
sure.
what? He's intuitive. He reads tarot cards.
Wow.
He is in a position right now where he's trusting in the universe and his intuition to guide him to that next step in his journey, right? And also it ties back to what you just said about we're on this journey talking about food, and I'll take it a different angle. You constantly want to have those things that are feeding you and teaching you. And
for sure.
And that's where I am. I'm learning right now. I am still out here experiencing things even now. To go a little bit deeper in my story, just 1 year after I lost my daughter, I almost lost one of my little brothers.
Wow.
I have 3 little brothers. One of them had a car hit his motorcycle.
That is insane.
Hit and run, almost lost his life, in the hospital, in a coma, almost exactly a year after I lost my daughter. And then a year later, so just a couple months ago, my husband had a stroke.
My goodness.
And he was in the ICU for 22 days. And these situations, each time, my perspective on them was so important. You mentioned people lose a child. Right? They can go down a path of anguish and a path of, I can never breathe again. I don't care what happens to me. I don't care what happens to the rest of my family. I don't care about my job. I can't even get out of bed anymore,
for sure.
right?
For sure.
It's all about your perspective.
Yes.
It's all about the way that you look at it. And now I have the ability to look at things that happen in my life and say, why is this happening? What am I supposed to take from this? What am I supposed to learn from this, right? Even with my current company, different opportunities within this company that I've not been given, where I felt like I deserved them, right? I have to now look at those things and say, okay, why? What am I learning from this? What am I taking away from this? And realize that, and you and I were talking about this earlier, we take things so seriously, and we need to go with the flow sometimes. And that's part of a spiritual awakening is being open to just going with the flow and not saying, okay, I'm about to be this age and I have to do this and I have to be married and I have to buy this and I have to be at this point in my career. You have to realize that you can't take it so serious to the point to where you think you're going to be able to plan out every year of your life, and that expectation is never, it's not real.
And it's connected to what I talked about, us having information. It's not just religion. It is our life. Our life is moving rapidly now. So now we're acquiring information. That is the fractures of our relationships, friendships, marriages. Every ship you can see happening because of the knowledge that we're acquiring at the speed of light. Things are happening so fast. We're getting smarter. So at every level, we want different things. Yeah. It is a harsh reality when information open up to us. And now the structure of religion now is the ugliness of it. It was Santa Claus at first, and now we realize.
The hardest part for me was realizing that I had been lied to for so many years. In my perspective now,
absolutely,
right? That was the hardest part for me. Was like I lived in fear for so long, and there was, in my perspective, no reason for that. I should not have been feeling, I shouldn't have been worrying about all these things. I shouldn't have been worrying about people judging me for this or people judging me for that, or I shouldn't have been worried about those things.
Yeah.
That was the harshest part for me.
Yeah. And it's tough. And I think the things that we believe now are the future of our spiritual revolution. At some point, it'll become stale too. It'll become old. It'll become the infrastructure that our kids will need won't be. That's the tragedy of life, is you can't see all the way down the road. There's in the natural perspective. Yeah. Meaning that, you can. I can't.
We can do a session right now.
Oh, but
Tim's already booked. So we're
Tim, you booked. Tim, we about to close out. But listen, Billy, this is a good conversation. Yeah. This is good, man. Like, I'm glad we did this. I think this was good.
I appreciate this time.
Absolutely.
This is my first time publicly speaking about this. So.
It was good. It was robust. I think that this is the conversation now and people will know who you are, and people will connect with you, and people won't connect with you. Amen. People will be like, oh, this is, and everybody has their spiritual right. I think that's where we start with the chaos that's going on in the world right now, is that we got to realize we have to have our own spiritual walk. Everybody deserves it. You do, to see God, because you walk your walk every day. Listen, as bad as I feel for you, though, I can't have empathy for you, only sympathy, because I've never walked that pathway. Yeah. So who am I to tell you how God is framed in your reality? Who am I? And that's where we got to, and that's the respect us all. At least, no matter what religiosity, no matter what infrastructure of spirituality you have, respect has to be universal across the board of a person's right to practice without you calling them crazy or an insane or conspiracy theory or out of the will of God, because we don't know the full will of God, even admittedly so. Lean not into your own understanding. Lean not. So even if you're a Christian and you think what you're saying is demonic or witchcraft, and not dwelling in the spirit of God, and people will believe that. You have to know that. I've said this to you. You understand that when you come out and put it on camera on the internet, don't go away. People will judge. You know, and you're the first white person on a deep surface experience.
Are you serious?
You're the first white person on a deep surface experience.
So, on the burger.
Listen, you're the first white person on the deep surface experience.
Listen, I'm honored. First person to have this type of conversation, and the first white person.
Yeah.
That's why Tim messed up our first interview.
He did.
He wasn't ready.
No, listen, that's what really happened before we go. Yeah. Listen, Tim erased everything. Yeah. No lie, those lights was flickering though.
Don't get me started. We could talk.
I'll be honest.
About
I'm from the old folk church, and I was like this. Maybe God trying to tell me something.
Listen, listeners, the lights in this building were flickering off and on. And these two
I was like, did Billy put a hex on us?
And I just stood there because I knew what it was.
Billy,
I get
listen.
signs like that from my daughter every day.
You better give me that good juju.
Oh, you got it.
Listen, if you can see in the spiritual world, tell somebody to give you boy a couple million.
Hey, you can manifest that yourself, I promise.
But listen, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming out a second time.
Yeah.
It's an honor, man. I want to have these conversations. We're unique, man. I'm a unique individual. I believe I bring something unique to the table, and I want to have these unique, interesting stories. People want interesting. I think drama's played out. Drama has no real rhythm. It's just a bunch of noise. It gets you at first, and you get tired of it. Yeah. People want to be the entertainment is sort of dwindling. I think, it's sort of just entertainment. There's a level of entertainment in everything that you want to do. Obviously, you want to be presentable, professional. You want to be cunning a little bit, have a little bit of wittiness. It's okay. Have all of that. You have a little wordplay, a little swagger. But you got to be Steve to be that. But who's doing that? But nevertheless, we want to be open-minded here at the Deep Surface Experience. I think this is the throne of grace. Unmerited favor, and I think that's what that was the point of Christ. The consciousness is where we forego our ideas and our construction and our bounds, and we just look at the good of the whole, the utopia, the utilitarianistic nature of it, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. We don't leave any sheep behind. We don't leave nothing behind. We reframe the conversation, and we have it with people who are the opposite of you, Billy. So how about you come back and sit down with somebody who don't believe the same thing as you? I would love that. So we're going to do that. I want to have somebody on who just sees this differently than you. And just to get a perspective, because we need all sides. We need people to have that discourse, because maybe God is trying to tell them something. Maybe it is witchcraft. We need to know the truth so we can raise our babies. So we can get our babies over the hump. Bam, I'm right at the hour. Listen, guys, subscribe to the Deep Surface Experience on YouTube, Instagram's coming to different sites. Billy, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
This was a very organic conversation.
It was.
We didn't even talk much about the company.
We didn't talk about the company too much, did we?
But listen, Billy, you need to tell them that I don't need to tell. You need to tell who I was. Listen, tell them who I was.
Tell them who I was. Let me tell you who he was.
Equivalent. as a basket, okay.
Don't
No, no,
put me on like some ESPN.
No. As a to anything great, like my greatness there.
So you want me to say like
the equivalent in the NBA? Just go to the NBA. Okay. What would my equivalent greatness be in the business sector in the world?
Top 1%. I mean, you want me to say like LeBron James? You want me to say like Michael Jordan?
But was it?
It's the truth. I mean, top 1%, y'all.
I did.
Like,
listen,
there is no competing with this. Man, he was just incredible at what he did.
Down, but I'm that was 5 years in a row.
He was.
But here's where the greatness came from there, and we're gonna go from there, because Billie was the person that was the catalyst to that happening. Your belief in me struck something so deep that drove a work ethic that I didn't know existed. So when I got on that run, I just remember the opportunity you gave me when nobody wasn't. Because at the beginning of the first episode, when we was here, I was talking about liberty and how important liberty is. Yep. It is a fundamental right of the human being, of humankind, is to have the liberty to be able to do the things that they desire within their heart. And when somebody has you constrained in a place and you're desperately trying to get out, you know you got the talent, it took courage. I had to step outside of the cocoon and become a business guru and separate myself for you to see me. You have to step outside of your spiritual comfort zone for sometimes. Hey, I'm right here, God. God got to take stuff. Sometimes life don't always go your way. And then boom, here you are. Maybe
everything happens for a reason.
And God can be anything. Here we go.
Yeah.
Seasons and reasons. Seasons and reasons. Hey, listen, guys. Listen, man. We went a little bit over an hour, but that was good timing, though. That was good timing. Hey, but listen, though. I don't like to brag. I do not like to brag, though.
I'll brag for him.
I
Top
do
1%.
not. I don't brag, but they my listeners think I just be talking. These folks think I just be talking.
Legit. Whatever he said.
Nah, that was a good time, but that came after I got demoted. Yeah. You see? Yeah. When back really
we learned the most during the painful times.
That's where I can understand where you are, and I connect the most with your story is this for me and why I wanted it. Because I can understand hard things have to happen to me first. Yeah. Before I can springboard into my greatness.
That's right.
And it feels like, do I keep choosing? I like get in the position. I put myself in these, I'll like see it happening and like I'll feel like I have to do it. I'm destroying I know I'm destroying myself, but I'm gonna keep doing it. Yeah. And I'm consciously know it, but so that's where I see some synergy or some symmetrical energy there, like, okay, well, all right, well, I kind of see what she's talking about. It may be a piece of the puzzle, may not be the whole puzzle for everybody. Yeah. And as long as you, as a spiritual provider of the people, know that you're a piece of the pie and you're not the whole pie, and don't construct the mind. If you got the power if a spiritual people have the power to manipulate, that has been the crux. Wherever the creator sits, there's retribution on the way for spiritual manipulation. When you have the power you have that you've been given, that you can see, be responsible with it.
Absolutely.
Be responsible with it. So yeah, I'm really done this time. That what the people be saying in church. Man, Tim over there about to go to sleep, bro. Tim broke the camera. I can't believe you did that to Billy, Tim. I want everybody to get a picket sign outside of his job. I'm gonna tell y'all where you work at. What's his number at? I'm just kidding. We out.